Hey guys, Hype here. This is a very specific configuration of AR that I've wanted for a long time, but I've never seen anybody build exactly this rifle the way that I wanted it. I figured at some point I would get around to just making it myself, but I did pitch the idea to my buddy Dane from Munitionworks one night while playing Helldivers 2, and he agreed to make at least this one for me, and if people really want it, I'm sure he could make more.
What are you running here today?
Just a gun. Just a normal, gun type gun. This rifle is tentatively called the FIXIE LT. It's kind of a combination of features that I like from other rifles, one of them being the Munitionworks FIXIE, which is a full-featured modern tactical carbine that just so happens to have a fixed front sight base. Another one is the H&R A2 government carbine that I reviewed a while back. That is a really excellent, lightweight, handy, simple, retro throwback gun, but it's still got a lot of concessions made to keep it clone correct for the retro market. And then the final rifle we're taking inspiration from is the Smith & Wesson M&P Sport 2, which still gets brought up to this day anytime someone is looking for a cheap basic rifle, despite the fact that it's probably over a decade old and has a lot of kind of outdated features. This is more or less what I think Smith & Wesson should have done with the M&P Sport 3 instead of just giving up and going with a 16-inch barrel and a 15-inch M-LOK free float handguard, just like everybody else makes. The start of this idea was essentially to make a very robust, lightweight, simple rifle, either for a person who just doesn't want to put all that much thought and effort into setting up their rifle, or for the kind of person who wants to have something lightweight and rugged to go along with their, their more serious, tactically kitted out rifles. The name of the game with the FIXIE LT is weight savings and simplicity, so we're going to go ahead and just discard a couple of ideas right off the bat. Number one, this will never be suppressed, either because we just don't want to suppress this because that's hanging a lot of weight off of the end of a rifle, we're trying to keep it lightweight, or because maybe this appeals more to the type of person who is simply never going to drop $1,000 and file paperwork to get an NFA item. We also are just saying goodbye to night vision, so this thing is not going to have any sort of laser aiming module. We can still get our light, sling, and optic on here, check the 3 big boxes for a defensive carbine, while just using a 2-piece plastic clamshell handguard, but because this is mid-length rather than carbine length, like on the Smith & Wesson M&P Sport, we're giving more room for our hand, more room for our sling attachment points, we're pushing the light more forward on the gun, we're just getting an overall more modern, more shootable package. Because we've completely given up on using a suppressor, that's allowed us to do a couple more things, like switch to a pencil weight barrel. Not really concerned about shooting this thing with massive high volume strings of fire, putting a heavy can on the end and potentially causing a point of impact shift. We don't really care. We want it lightweight and handy. Also, because we're not worried about the modularity, swapping out muzzle devices for use with suppressors, we've gone with the A2 birdcage flash hider, which is the only flash hider that you need if you don't intend to suppress. Also, this one is pinned and welded, so this thing is actually a 14.7-inch barrel with a pinned and welded flash hider, keeping this a standard rifle, no NFA stamp required, because of course, the type of person buying this does not want to stamp it, or doesn't want to stamp anything. And again, if we compare this to something like a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport 2, that has a 16-inch barrel with an A2 birdcage, so this is a couple inches shorter and lighter still. The barrel length of 14.7 inches is actually something that was inspired by the H&R A2 government carbine. If you go with a 14.5-inch barrel, you cannot pin and weld an A2 birdcage flash hider to hit the 16-inch limit. You actually have to use an extended flash hider or stack some washers in a really gross, messed up looking way. So this just gives you the proper aesthetics of an A2 birdcage, not an extended one or some other different brand of flash hider. And also, all things being equal, I guess I would rather have 0.2 inches of barrel than 0.2 inches of flash hider. So some of you guys are probably looking at this thing and saying, I'm pretty sure I've seen one of those before, but you haven't. Not this specific configuration. One of those reasons is because Magpul SL handguards are very uncommon. First of all, they are not compatible with the sling swivel. So if you want to drop one of these things into, an existing A2 front sight base rifle like a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport 2, you actually have to drill out the rivet and get rid of that sling swivel on the bottom of the front sight base because the Magpul is extended and covers it up. The other reason that Magpul mid-length SL handguards are so rare to see, in particular, is because the SL series handguards are so slim that they require the use of a round handguard end cap. Usually you only see that on carbine-length gas systems. If you're going with mid-length or rifle, you're going to see the triangular end cap. And then you are forced to use the standard Magpul handguards, which are substantially bulkier. I don't really like the feel of them. I don't really like the weight of them in this configuration. They have extremely epic amounts of heat shielding inside, but again, this is not a super high volume rate of fire gun. We're not that concerned about it. The SL handguard still has adequate heat shielding for what we're going to use this for. So yeah, just in general, it is pretty rare to see a mid-length front sight-based gun. That's because the front sight base fell out of favor well before the mid-length gas system fell into favor. There is one factory rifle configuration that is extremely close to this, and it is the Sons of Liberty Gunworks Patrol SL. Couple differences though, that one has a full weight barrel. Also, they went with a 13.7-inch barrel and a pin and welded Knox. I don't like 13.7. And I also don't like the Knox brake, and I don't like and will never use the Chemo suppressor mounting interface. So, you know, that one gets pretty close, but unfortunately it's just not there. This is what we were looking for.
This recoils surprisingly not that much for a gun with no barrel.
Yeah.
There's actually no barrel here. It's just a notional barrel, a front sight block, and a magpul
implication
handguard.
of a barrel. There's barrel implied. I probably waited more than long enough to introduce the sponsor of today's video, Venture Surplus. If you're looking for effective, affordable, and high-quality outdoor and tactical gear, check out Venture Surplus and use the code in the video description to save 10% off your order. Usually in these ad reads, I talk about products Venture has that are seasonally appropriate, but today I wanted to talk about the concept of military surplus. Oh yeah, we're highbrow tonight. The thing about military surplus is that it's a lot more like shopping at Goodwill than it is like shopping at Walmart. You never really know what they're gonna have, so you kind of have to check back frequently if you're trying to look for cool stuff or good deals. One example is the military surplus light fighter tent. I've got one of these, Brassfax has got one of these, Venture gets them in periodically, and they always sell out super fast. So I can never really tell you, hey, go to Venture and pick up a light fighter tent, because they're just never in stock. But they do restock, and savvy surplus shoppers always pick them up pretty quickly. You never know what's going to show up on a military surplus site, so if you find one you love, like Venture Surplus, check back regularly. One of the really oddball items they have right now is a World War II era G-suit. A pressurized flight suit from the prop plane era. They only have one in stock, and it's in my size. I'm pretty sure the reason this is a surplus item is because people my size are generally too tall to be pilots. I hate to pull an indie and say it belongs in a museum, but if you operate an aviation museum and you've got a naked mannequin, maybe you should pick this thing up. Anyway, check out Venture Surplus at the link in the description. Use the code. Thank you very much to Venture for sponsoring this channel. Thank you guys for watching. Let's get back into it.
I don't think this is good for my TBI.
No. No, it is not. So what's the point of a build like this? You could, of course, theory craft all kinds of interesting POUs. One of the ones Brassfax has talked about before is the field rifle or the mountain rifle, a lightweight, hikeable carbine. You're not expecting to dump a whole bunch of magazines through this thing. You're not expecting to use it in a really hardcore tactical situation, but you sure would like to have rifle ballistics on hand and a lightweight package so you can carry it around easier. The other POU that I had in mind when I pitched this project to Dane is the rifle for people who have pretty much had it with rifles. If you're just like sick of the rat race trying to figure everything else out, maybe you just need something that's so simple it does not give you the options to drive yourself crazy with customization. This is the cure for restless rifle syndrome. There's only one way to set this thing up, and I've done it here. As far as the person goes who just wants an extremely affordable home defense rifle, it's probably going to be hard to talk them into something like this because installing and pinning a front sight base is actually a lot more time consuming and expensive than just putting on a low profile gas block and tossing on, you know, a friction fit 15-inch M-LOK handguard. So that's one reason why 16-inch rifles with 15-inch handguards are so popular. It's because they can be made very easily and cheaply. I think it's somewhat hard to explain to somebody who isn't a hardcore clone fag why they would pay extra for a much older design of front sight.
Cop, what's your opinion on the 19th Amendment?
Which one's that?
Right to vote.
Oh, I don't think anybody should have that. Haven't you heard? I'm a fascist. Which means I believe that only the most fashionable should be in charge of us. You know, like the... Alright, so let's talk about how I have this thing set up. When I initially put together this build and took it down to Utah to shoot with Brassfax, I had a Vortex Spark Solar Red Dot and a Vortex 3X Micro Magnifier on the back because I wanted to try out those optics.
What's wrong with this one?
1 click equals 1 MOA.
You get 1 full MOA per click?
1 MOA per click.
That's so generous of them.
It's so coarse of them. So uncouth. The optic currently on here is an Aimpoint ACO Advanced Carbine Optic Dane shipped this rifle with an MBUS 3 rear sight. The older MBUS are actually kind of getting harder to find. I don't know if they're just producing them less or phasing them out or what. The MBUS 3 is a better sight in a lot of ways. However, I don't think it matches the aesthetic of this Magpul furniture. The SL Handguard's been around for a pretty long time. The triangular fixed MOE carbine stock is not one of their newer items. The K2 grip is probably the newest piece of furniture on this gun. But yeah, I don't know. I put a regular MBUS on there because I'm cantankerous like that. Most of this rifle is a lot closer to the entry-level Munitionworks Joe carbine rather than his higher-end stuff like the Crane or the full-featured FIXIE. So this is just a standard mil-spec fire control group, standard safety. Actually, it did come with an ambidextrous safety. I de-ambidextrous-sized it because I don't like ambidextrous safeties very much, and I don't want brass tacks to be able to use my gun. This bolt carrier group is not what the gun would come with if you bought one from Munitionworks. This is one that I took out of one of my other Munitionworks guns. Dane is currently using hard chrome BCGs on all of his rifles, but one was not available at the time this rifle was shipped. So for the sling setup, we've got a Magpul MS1. These are not my favorite slings, but they are very affordable and very rugged. It's attached with a regular QD swivel on the back, and this does have the QD cup add-on because the fixed carbine stock is not technically sling compatible out of the box. Weird little add-on you got to purchase. I assume if you buy one of these things from Dane, it will come with that installed because he's, attention to detail is kind of his thing. At the front, you've got a paraclip and a paraclip adapter mounted onto the SL Handguard. As far as the weapon light goes, we've got a Magpul extended cantilever mount and a ProTac 2L, Streamlight ProTac 2L light. This is the 2 CR123 version. It is not the rechargeable version like the HLX. If you have an older Surefire weapon light with the old Scout mount pattern instead of the Pro mount, you can mount it in one of these things. Those are getting harder to find because now almost every light you buy from Surefire is going to have the Pro mount, the swivel in it, instead of the original Bosses for mounts like this. This gives us plenty of room for our hand. We get nice clicky activation on the back of the white light. We have the sling here at the back of the handguard. Generally, I prefer it to be at the front of the handguard, but generally I prefer to use vert grips, and generally I prefer to use dual button tape switches for lights and lasers. None of that's happening on this gun, so totally acceptable to do it this way. You might be able to tell that the Magpul SL handguard is pretty beat up from getting dragged across rocks. The nice thing is this is essentially a sacrificial part. These things are really cheap and you could just buy them in different colors whenever you feel like replacing it. You can even mix and match the top and the bottom half to get a two-tone look if you really wanted to. It's essentially a wear part. Also, the M-LOK interface on the inside of the SL handguard is not reinforced with metal at all. It's just plastic, so as you install and remove your M-LOK based accessories, you are going to wear out and destroy the inside of the rail. First of all, stop doing that. Set the gun up and leave it like that, right? Okay, well obviously that's an unrealistic thing to ask of you because I wouldn't ask it of myself. But again, okay, we destroyed the M-LOK slots, we spend another $30 and buy a replacement handguard, and then we've learned our lesson and we don't fuck with it anymore. The reason this has a Magpul MOE fixed carbine stock on it is mostly just for aesthetics, but also because it's a fixed stock. We have a fixed front sight base. It's called the FIXIE LT. You can also put a fixed magnification prism scope on there like an ACOG or one of the PA micro prisms, and then you've got fixed, and man, that really soothes my unmedicated OCD. The one detail that I would change, and the one thing that would be different about this gun if I had built it myself, aside from the general quality being a lot lower, because like I can't stake castle nuts nearly this well. Anyway, also I don't lap the receiver extension, and I don't like do all the, important steps when I assemble an AR. I just put a kitchen towel on my lap so I don't get grease on my pants. That's pretty much the only step that I take, and it's more prophylactic than anything else. Anyway, it's very cold and I'm losing my mind out here. So the way that I prefer to set up the Magpul fixed carbine stock is with the flush plug here. They basically, when they ship these stocks, they come with two of these little like plugs that fill up the end here. One of them is relieved like this so that you can access a QD end plate if you so want. I never use these. I can't stand them. I can't stand the sling being there just in the first place, but also the way that the sling binds up and doesn't rotate properly when it's mounted into one of these things. So I would have used a flat end plate and used the flush, the filler plug on there. That's just the way that my OCD works. Probably a smart idea to give people this option because a lot of people do like it even if I don't. Another thing to mention with the stock is that this does have the extended rubberized butt pad. This just adds a little bit of length to pull. A lot of people complain that the fixed MOE stock is too short. A lot of these people are shooting weird to begin with, so I think they should adjust their stance before they adjust their stock. However, with the harder rubber, the skinnier rubber butt pad that comes on these things, it is a little bit on the short side. with the extended rubber on here. This is basically exactly as long as I extend my stocks to anyway. And I'm 6'4", and if I can do it, you really don't have any excuse. So fix yourself, not your stock. That's basically all there is to say about the rifle, so I'm going to go back home and then hop in the studio. We'll tell you about the shooting trip that I took this thing on and how it performed. See you there.
Everybody who sees it calls it, I think.
But then you just get hit.
That's fine.
That's not fine. Then it sounds like you got 6 hits in one shot.
Well, you don't know that I didn't do that.
Exactly.
He's running French.
Dude, I got 995 brown tip in here.
That's right. Love McGrady.
It's going into the next fucking day. So one of the primary focuses of the trip that I shot the FIXIE LT on was actually a comparison between handguns, PDWs, and rifles in a competition setting. The rifles that I had with me were my lightweight SPR build and the FIXIE LT, so you kind of got to run what you brung. We did a series of competition style stages and we ran them with a handgun, a PDW, and a rifle, and things went pretty badly for me. I actually used my backup iron sights on 2 separate platforms because of red dot failure. One was the red dot on my pistol turned off because I leaned against it too hard while it was in the holster, and the other issue was that my Vortex Spark Solar was busted out of the box, so the motion activation feature didn't work. Every couple hours it would turn off and I would have to actually remove the battery and reinstall it to get it turned back on. The automatic shutoff just so happened to kick in between when I made ready for the stage and when the shot timer went off, so I had to shoot that stage with backup irons. Actually, at the start of the stage I shot it with backup iron. I only used the fixed front sight base and I used the entire body of the red dot as a ghost ring rear sight. Don't ask. USPSA targets are so big and you shoot them from so close that you sort of don't need sights at all. We also did some of our usual mid-range shooting up in the Rocky Hills, and that was a much better fit for the rifle, although red dot plus magnifier really does not get you as much target ID as you'd like at those sorts of ranges. At the start of the trip, the rifle was actually optimistically buffered with a Springco red spring and an H2 buffer weight. The rifle appeared to be reliable and had immaculate ejection and recoil impulse. However, it became apparent that with that buffer setup, it was actually susceptible to limp shouldering, which I found out on some weird positional shooting we did on one of those USPSA stages. After that, we swapped it back to a carbine buffer and a Springco blue spring, and now it runs perfectly. That's the beauty of the AR platform. They just run. Anyway, the FIXIE LT is a lovely rifle to shoot and carry around, and also, unlike the H&R government carbine, I don't feel like a douchebag when I put modern accessories on it. I know carry handles are cool, but they're actually quite bad, and carry handle mounted optics suck ass to use, so there's a reason we stopped doing them. You could definitely apply some of the same principles of the FIXIE LT to a free-floated AR, one of those being using a shorter handguard than the barrel and just committing to never mounting a suppressor and laser to it. You would end up with something that worked as well or perhaps even better, but crucially, it would look like dog shit. That's the beauty of the fixed front sight base. It lets you get away with suboptimal choices in configuration and furniture because it just has so much panache. I don't know if the FIXIE LT is going to become an actual Munitionworks catalog item. However, Dane does a lot of custom work, so you could always just ask him to make you one of these if you think it's a really cool idea. As always, thank you guys very much for watching the video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. You can support the channel directly by subscribing and checking out the links in the video description, and I will see you guys next time.